Hey everyone, and welcome. So today, we're going to dive into this absolutely incredible story of how a police raid on a New York City bar didn't just end in arrests, it sparked a revolution. And believe it or not, it was all powered by a jukebox packed with Motown hits. We're going to uncover how a civil rights uprising and the music that defined an era are completely intertwined. I mean, really think about that. How can a single song actually change the world? It sounds like a huge, almost impossible question, right? But the answer might just be found in a very specific time and place. 1969, a bar in Greenwich Village, and a beat that brought people together, gave them a sense of identity, and when it really mattered, helped them fight back. All right, so to really get this, you have to picture it. We're heading back to New York City, 1969. And we're going to a place that, on the surface, was just a bar. But in reality, it was so much more. And that word, sanctuary, is everything here. The Stonewall Inn wasn't just some place to grab a drink. For a queer community that was constantly being pushed to the very edges of society, this was a lifeline. It was one of the only places where they could truly be themselves, connect with each other, and feel that incredible sense of freedom that comes from the simple act of dancing. And right at the heart of this whole scene, the thing literally giving it its pulse, was the jukebox. It wasn't just background noise. It was the engine of the community. It was the soundtrack to their defiance and their joy. So what exactly were they playing? Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. Let's talk about the music itself. Because the sound pumping out of that jukebox, well, it was crucial to everything that was about to happen. Yep, you heard that right. The dominant sound, the music that filled the air at the Stonewall Inn, was soul, R&B, and most of all, those undeniable hits coming out of Motown records. And there was a very good reason for that. I mean, let's be real, Motown music was basically engineered in a lab to make people dance. You just couldn't help it. You had that driving, syncopated rhythm from the bass and drums. You had that unstoppable pulse from tambourines and hand claps that just gets into your bones. And then, layered on top, you have these incredible, soulful vocals with hooks so catchy they could change the energy of a room in seconds. It was pure musical magic. But here's the absolute genius of it. Motown's real power was its crossover appeal. These weren't some obscure underground records. No way. These were massive pop hits that everybody knew, whether you were black or white, rich or poor. In the late 60s, Motown was everywhere. And that universality was the secret ingredient. Inside the Stonewall Inn, you had this incredibly diverse crowd of people. And Motown, this sound rooted in black music but loved by everyone, became their common ground. It was a shared language that let them all move to the same beat, sing the same chorus, and forge this incredibly powerful sense of community. But you know, this beautiful pocket of freedom and sound, it didn't exist in a vacuum. It was under a constant looming threat. And that tension, it was about to snap. Just look at this contrast. It's night and day, right? Inside that bar, you've got this amazing sense of community, freedom, and joy. But the moment you stepped outside or the authorities stepped inside, it was a totally different world. A world of surveillance, harassment, and violence. The very space they'd carved out for themselves was a constant target. And this is so crucial to understand. In this kind of environment, dancing stops being just, well, dancing. In a world that basically criminalized your very existence, the simple, joyful act of dancing with people like you becomes a powerful act of defiance. It was a political statement, and that's exactly why it was targeted. And then came the night of June 28th, 1969. This is when that pressure cooker finally blew. Another police raid, something the patrons had endured time and time again, kicked off. But this time was different. People were fed up. They started to resist. That resistance spilled out onto the street, a crowd formed, and the whole situation just exploded into a full-blown uprising that lasted for days and changed everything. So that uprising was a massive turning point. It was a spark. And from that spark, a whole new, empowered culture was about to catch fire, with a brand new soundtrack to go with it. You can literally draw a straight line from what happened that night to the evolution of the modern dance floor. First, the community fights back to protect its space. Then the gay liberation movement begins to reclaim and redefine these clubs as places of safety and political power. And out of that new sense of freedom comes a new sound, disco. And of course, The beat goes on, paving the way for house, techno, and the amazing ballroom culture that followed. And what's so cool is when you really listen to disco, you can totally hear its DNA. It's like Motown's younger, flashier sibling. You've still got that heavy focus on the rhythm. The bass and drums are right up front. You've got those huge, lavish arrangements with strings and horns, and you've still got those soulful, catchy pop melodies that everyone can sing along to. Disco basically took the danceable pop recipe that Motown perfected and just supercharged it for this new, liberated club scene. Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. What started with a simple jukebox and a small, dark bar ended up having these huge, world-changing consequences. And I think this is the main takeaway here. That music playing at Stonewall, it wasn't just some background noise for a party. It was fundamental to everything. It was the glue. It was the energy source. It was the shared language for a community that was under siege. And this, right here, this says it all. That beat, that rhythm, it did more than just make people dance. It bound them together into a community. It gave them a collective identity. And by doing that, it nurtured the very spirit of resistance that finally boiled over on that night in June. It just goes to show you the power of music and a shared space is incredible. It can build communities and it can fuel movements. So maybe the next time you're on a dance floor, completely lost in the beat, just take a second to think about that deeper pulse that connects all of us. What are we affirming and what are we building every single time we dance together?